Good morning, Andrew. Welcome to Media Matters, hosted by Fabulous. This is your host, Palak, and it's honor to have you. Well, before starting the questions, I would like to inform you that this interview will be published on the website of Fabulous. So sign up to the Fabulous website, and then you will get the access to watch this interview. Okay, so shall we proceed with the questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andrew. So, looking back on your journey, what personal values or philosophies have consistently guiding you through the world of sports journalism?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Honestly, curiosity and love of people has driven me, love of storytelling. My first love was football. I fell into radio. I never really thought that you could have a job that was talking about football on the radio. I was 21 and it changed my life. And then as I grew older, I fell more in love with combat sports. I love the spectacle and gladiatorial nature of it. What I realized is if I take you to see a boxing match, we have red corner versus blue corner, and there's no reason why you should care about who wins. So then it's our responsibility as storytellers to make you care and find out what is the story behind the gentleman in blue or the gentleman in red. And so it's the storytelling and the people that I fell in love with. And as my career has gone on, it doesn't matter what sport it is. If you're sitting across from a human being, they have a story. And whether you're an expert on that sport or not, if you know people, you're going to be able to make people interested and give them a reference point.
Very interesting, Andrew. So, moving on to next question. Leading a team across multiple countries and languages at FIFA must have come with its share of surprises. What did that experience teach you about telling stories on a truly global scale?
That was an unbelievable experience. It was 3 years at FIFA, leading the APAC content team for FIFA Plus. We launched an OTT platform, which was a huge project. And I was looking after Japan, Korea, also dealing with India and Indonesia. And the fascinating thing about Asia, I've been here 22 years, is the most unique continent in terms of characters, personalities, cultures. You cannot group together different countries in Asia and just put them under a blanket. China is different from Japan. Korea is very different from India, and so on and so forth. So you have to understand that every market has its own practices, its own cultures, and its own habits of consumption. For example, in countries like Myanmar and Cambodia, Facebook is still huge. For you or I, perhaps we're not using Facebook so much anymore. Other regions, they're only focused on TikTok. So we really had to understand each region. And for this, you need to hire the right people in market. And the other thing that sounds so obvious is you cannot just give people English and expect them to enjoy it, relate to it. Not everybody in the world speaks English. The world is changing all the time. So you have to find the right content, whether it's the right length, then the right platform and the right messaging. So do you use subtitles? Do you use a local presenter? Are you working with local influencers? I was working with influencers at the World Cup in Qatar. We had one from Korea, one from Japan. And it was so interesting because the style is so different. I don't know how much Japanese content you've consumed, but it's so fun. It's so larger than life, so energetic. And then we see different countries have a very different tone. So the beauty of the World Cup is it is about celebrating all the different countries and bringing them together. And it was such a challenge. The pressure was on to deliver. At the same time, we also live in a world where people want numbers. And you want to do things with integrity, but also deliver numbers. So you're trying to juggle that while catering for every individual market, but also catering for the global market. So it's a fun challenge.
It must be very challenging, like to diverse across the languages and to just tell the stories in different languages to connect with the audience. It's very difficult because if they don't understand the language, then how you really connect with them?
Exactly. And I think a lot of the big outlets, and I've worked for big outlets, small outlets, startups, and I think it took some of the bigger outlets a long time to really realize the market and the complexities of the market. You have to speak to people if they're 19 years old or 69 years old. If they're coming from different countries, they're going to consume it in a way, and you have to cater for them. They're not just going to come to you. Unless, and there is one, I think, caveat, I think, which is wonderful about sport and why football is so big. It transcends language. For you or I to enjoy a goal, we don't need to speak the same language. So that aspect of it is fascinating, but unless you hold the rights, which costs millions upon millions of dollars, you don't always have the rights to play with. I've worked with rights holders, I've worked for rights holders, and I've worked with no rights whatsoever. So different challenges. When you have the rights, it's so fun to play with that content. Oh, we have the rights to use these goals. We can get so creative. But often you don't have any rights. That you cannot put them on social media. They're so strict. And this is something that we've had to come to understand. You have to play by all of the rules. You have to play within certain arenas. And that is another challenge as well that makes it fun, I think.
Oh, Andrew, it's so fun. So, having interviewed legends like Connor and Dana White, which conversation challenged your journalistic approach the most, and how did you adapt to that?
Good question. Honestly, going back to the start of this interview, it is really about people. And Connor, I believe at the time, it was around the time of the Cowboy fight, he was coming off of some personal controversy, which is nothing really new for him. And he was really on his best behavior, suit and tie, very engaged, very polite, very PR friendly. And that was an interesting one because you don't know what kind of Conor McGregor you're going to get. He can be larger than life at times, and he can be controversial. Ultimately, it's about looking somebody in the eye, delivering your question well, being clear, being concise, being understood, and using your time. So often I find in interviews, we have drawn out introductions or fluff questions, and ultimately we're fighting a battle for people's attention. Ultimately, you have to get to the point, you have to get to what's interesting, and you have to toe that line between what is interesting, but what is also just clickbait, what is content that's lacking in integrity. So to answer your question, you have to credit, there's a reason that Dana White and Conor McGregor are such big names, is because they're so good on camera. Dana White, one thing I really noticed is when you ask him a question, he really looks you in the eye. He is completely and utterly there with you, focused on your question. And that gives you so much energy as the guy asking the question, because when somebody gives you that kind of energy, it energizes you as well. And it's something that you need to think about as well. How you've delivered your question is often how you're going to receive back. So it just comes down to human dynamics. But when it comes to names like McGregor and White, they're naturals. They speak well. When they talk, people tend to listen. They have a magic, which is the kind of magic I look for. It's the kind of interviews that stand out for me. Those athletes and those public figures who can really talk and have that energy and magnetism, those are the ones that get the views. It's not always about what you do in your job day to day. It's also about the whole package.
It's really fun when you interview these kind of personalities that are just into answering and delivering questions and answers to your questions. So moving on, Andrew, you have covered events ranging from underground MMA fights to major UFC events. How do you adjust your storytellings to suit such diverse platforms?
That's an interesting point I was talking with a friend about, because some of the stuff I've done is wild. It's really viral. But if you want to be a serious journalist, there is a fine line. For example, I have commentated, and this was satire, I've commentated on the Ultimate Dick Kicking Championship. Now, this is a satire of power slap of Dana White. And it was supposed to be a bit of fun, and it was just theater. The guys doing it were wearing protection. And it went totally viral. I think it got 50, 75 million views. But of course, if you become the guy who's famous for commentating the Ultimate Dick Kicking Championship, can you then be the guy who stood at the World Cup final in a suit? Maybe you can. I've spoken to people who have been hugely successful just by following their own intuition and by being themselves. Sometimes there's an idea that we have to be this certain person. You have to speak like a presenter and wear the suit and be the person that they expect from you, that these big corporations expect from you. But at the same time, now in the way that media is, the audience responds to people who are themselves. I always think of maybe an example. Let's say you're in a ESPN and somebody walks across the shot. I think when I was younger, when I was 21, if I was presenting, I would have just been like, oh my God, someone's walking across the shot. Let's pretend that everything's fine. They'll go and the moment will pass and everything will be fine. But that's not how humans behave. You should really just be like, Well, sorry, guys. One of our interns just walked across the shot. What a nightmare afternoon, or just make fun of the situation, but people are going to respond to that. Maybe it's even going to go viral, or maybe you're going to make something good out of something uncomfortable. But I find that pretending that mistakes don't happen and that we're not human and that we're so polished all the time is not the way to go. And it's not the way that sports media has evolved. I think authenticity is so important, which is why we've seen YouTubers and streamers surpass television hosts. TV and old guys in suits, it's not really a thing anymore. Maybe in America, where you have the opinionated guys like Stephen A. Smith, Colin Cowherd, that works because they have strong opinions. But a man reading off a prompter, bringing you your news, is not interesting anymore. And I think sports media has moved on.
So, at Essentially Sports, how do you balance editorial integrity with the need for engaging content in a digital first environment?
This is such a difficult balance because I believe Essentially Sports' biggest strength is their editorial numbers. They have an unbelievable ability to attract clicks, which in this day and age is such a huge goal for outlets. Without the clicks, there's no revenue. Without the revenue, there's no outlet. So this is the thing that's giving everybody jobs. But you must maintain a balance and keep your integrity, because the trouble is, if you go for the sexy headline, the controversial headline, yes, you might get the clicks, but the person you're writing about, are they going to come back to you? This is the balance that you have to find. I come a little bit more from the old school, from the television background. So integrity is very important to me, and is very important that I maintain the trust. If somebody has given me their time and the courtesy to give me an interview, I have to respect that. So I always tread that line, and sometimes we get exuberant young writers who get a bit excited because they are conditioned to make the headline as exciting as it can be. And sometimes I have to reel them back and say, look, this person should be intriguing enough in their own right. We shouldn't have to make it clickbaity. So it's a balance I think every outlet faces. And even those traditional outlets that maybe we grew up with, that we hold as a high source of integrity. I mean, even the BBC has been in trouble at times for not always getting things right. Even they have this challenge to try and attract eyeballs, right? So it's something every single outlet has. I would always try to move on the side of integrity versus clicks, because that's just who I am. And I think clicks in the short term are great, but if you do so by sacrificing your integrity at the long term, this can be catastrophic. Once you lose your reputation and the trust, whole agencies and individuals will not work with you. So it's an ongoing battle.
That is the point. It's like when you are a journalist, you have to maintain that integrity and everything. And it's very difficult to maintain it because you have opinionated articles and everything, and you have to work according to the organization. So it's kind of difficult to balance out. And as you said, it's actually very claustrophobic to do.
It's it. And if you come out with an opinion that's, let's say you're talking about an athlete and you say, yeah, sometimes they play well and sometimes they play badly, and you're just very dry and very balanced, is anybody going to watch your analysis? And I feel like with analysts now, they either need to come out very strongly in positive terms or very strongly in negative terms. And sometimes you're watching the analysis and you're thinking, do they really believe this? Or are they just coming out with something really controversial, like Neymar's the most overrated striker Brazil has produced in the last 10 years, because that's a huge outlandish statement and it's going to make people click and it's going to make them angry. But do you believe something like that? Is there evidence? I feel like sport can be so subjective. You can find the evidence to create a backdrop for any argument. So you have to be interesting. It's your duty to bring energy and passion. But maybe naively, I hope often that's enough. If your energy and passion and your knowledge is there, it should be interesting to listen to without being outlandish and hyperbolic for the sake of it.
So working at Fox Sports Asia and ESPN give you a lot of exposure to different sports culture. How has that changed the way you cover stories today?
I do feel it really gave me a lovely balance and a broad backdrop to pursue different sports. When I came in, I think maybe my second day, I was cutting field hockey. I remember it was New Zealand, and I played it as a kid, but I don't sit and watch field hockey very often. I did everything from the NBA to Formula One to MotoGP, and it gives you a beautiful understanding of where is the action. I have to watch 3 hours and I have to make it 90 seconds. And that ability, and you can't mess around, you can't sit there agonizing over which shot to use. You have to be able to understand where is the story. And I think that ability has served me really well. It was like going to school. I was there 6-7 years. I was an assistant producer in the television side, writing scripts, editing day in day out, working with editors, working with presenters, and then evolving more onto the digital side. So having that solid old school television background, then going to digital. Now it's taught me every day, where is the story? So if I interview you and I can decide, okay, this is perfect for a reel, this is perfect for an article, these were the three most interesting parts that we talked about. Who is going to sit and watch our half-hour interview? It would be nice to think a lot of people, but maybe people prefer the highlights. So you have to be able to find out where those highlights are. And that's what Fox Sports gave me, the ability to find the story and find it fast.
So, how do you envision the role of AI and data analytics in shaping future sports narratives? Do you think they will help sports stories to get better?
AI is such a fascinating topic and a scary one, I have to say, because it is coming for people's jobs. And if you don't sharpen up, it's coming for you. This is the reality. So I've never struggled with creativity and ideas, but sometimes a guy like me who gets so excited about the creative aspects, you fall short maybe on grammar or something like that because you're so excited by the quotes, by the story that you're telling. Sometimes the basics fall down. So if you use AI as a collaborative tool, not to replace your personality, then I think it's absolutely amazing. It's phenomenal that my article in an instant can have perfect grammar but still retain my identity and my energy. That's fantastic for me. But of course, it's a cliche now, but we cannot let it replace us. It has to be in collaboration with who we are. And the good thing is, I think sometimes now the audience can just see through it. If I do a video that's written by AI, I don't think it's going to do very well because people just see through it. The market is totally saturated with, we are kind of a lazy species at times. There's a reason why we like to order Uber Eats because it's so easy. It's there for us. AI is there for you. You don't have to bother writing an article anymore. But if you want it to be good, you still need to put the work in. If you use AI to collaborate with you, it can enhance your writing, can have all of your beautiful ideas, and the grammar can be perfect. It can assist you with structure. It can help, you can converse with it almost like a teammate. It can be your personal assistant. That's fascinating. And I'm still diving into what it can do for editing. I think it's put a lot of graphic designers out of work already.
Like with AI, also, you need human mind. And in the journalism field like that, you have to maintain the accuracy and you have to give the fair representation of news. So AI can be like useful, but yes, you cannot really depend on AI for that.
Yes.
So moving on to next question. When producing Eat, Play, Fight, how did you balance cultural authenticity with entertainment values?
Eat, Play, Fight was such an adventure because we began by recording it any way that we could. We didn't have a budget. It was me and my creative partner friend, John Nutt, who's done everything in the fight game, from being the MC, a ringleader, a fighter, a commentator. He's the mastermind behind Fight Circus and Full Metal Dojo. In the pandemic, they created Fight Circus. They went super viral. Their clips have been shared by 50 Cent, Snoop Dogg, Bill Burr. He brought the entertainment side to the fight game. So he led such an interesting life. And I, in turn, also was going to all these wonderful sports events. And we thought, let's mix food and travel and sport. Sport is just the thing in the middle, but then all these other strands like music, fashion, they come out of it. And so what we were doing was just documenting these amazing events that we went to, however we could, no budget, pick up a camera, just make it, pick up a phone, just make it. And then eventually we attracted the attention of Chang Beer and we were able to sell our show. And so it was a dream come true, having a televised show on Fox Sports, Eat, Play, Fight. We had 4 episodes. Episode 1 was Conor McGregor in Las Vegas. And to answer your question, ultimately, as I said, it's always about people. You have to go everywhere with an open mind. you're not the one who knows everything and the audience goes in there knowing nothing. It's up to the people you encounter and the places you encounter to tell the story. And that discovery and that joy of discovery is what translates to make it entertaining. Ultimately, you're going to these very cool places, interviewing very cool people and eating delicious and intriguing things. And those should jump out of the screen. And that's what makes it entertaining, along with good, sharp editing. Shout out to Brandon Mendes. Great music, good choices in terms of the storytelling. Ultimately, if your concept is sharp, which I think Eat, Play, Fight was, I mean, we were inspired by the Anthony Bourdains and Louis Theroux of this world. That's what tells the story, and the different cultures of the different places we went to shone through because we were just going there with a curious eye and then experiencing everything and letting it hit us and wash over us, and in turn letting it wash over the audience as well. So the big decisions were always, how can we edit this in a vibrant way? What gets to go in the final cut? And the storytelling, how long do we leave this shot for? What music do we use? And those choices are such a privilege to have. That's the most fun part of making content, is how do we tell a story?
The lead voice talent for combat sports content. How do you strike the right emotional tone?
This also comes back to AI. I said earlier, one thing I'm a bit thankful for is I do think the audience has become more discerning. And when I hear an AI voice, I find it cold now. I know that it's going to get better, but they're mispronouncing names and it sounds still too robotic, even though it's like a lovely, rich voice. It's very cliche, I think, now that we hear AI voicing. And I do love the fact that some outlets have kind of replaced me with AI and then came back to me because maybe the audience was starting to reject the AI. But I don't know how long that's going to last because it's just getting better and better. But in terms of my own style, it really depends on the content itself. I'm a pretty international guy. I've been away from England for 22 years. My wife is American. So my accent jumps around a little bit depending on who I'm talking to. And the interesting thing is I can freely admit if I'm doing like a pro wrestling or a basketball voiceover, you can hear my voice becoming more energized and a little bit more American. But if I'm talking about business and I've presented Rex shows, sometimes it's more appropriate to be much more British and go back to my roots when I'm speaking and be really clear and concise. So the energy is totally reflected on what the script is. If it's super Gen Z, super American sports, then maybe we've got to be really energetic and really like this. And then if it's something more, I don't know, we're talking about cinema and we're talking about James Bond, the voice needs to slow right down and we need to create an atmosphere. So it's fun to play with those.
So moving on to the last question, Andrew. What role do you think fan-generated content will play in shaping the future of sports journalism?
Fan-generated content, yes, it's already here. It's already a huge thing. You only need to go to your phone and scroll for a few seconds and you'll find that fan-generated content is absolutely key and arguably more important than the content that was shot with $100,000 camera in a studio. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The days of having the days where I grew up in television coverage of 3, 4, 5, 6 $100,000 cameras, makeup person, suit, tie. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the sports news. That's not how we consume our media anymore. And often what we find is the content that is so overly polished, especially on platforms like Instagram, often it doesn't do that well. It's the content which is just a guy or a girl with their phone and they have a great idea and they have something to say. We see millions of views. It comes back probably to authenticity. If the polished studio content doesn't speak to me, but the guy who has something to say, who's maybe my age or shares my opinions, maybe that speaks to me a lot more. And maybe I don't relate to the polished studio environment, but when it's just shot with a phone and maybe not having all the bells and whistles, maybe it speaks to me a lot more. That's some trend that anyone who works in this industry has to recognize. So that battle, though, when you work for a big outlet like FIFA, is an interesting one because you want to make content that's authentic, but you also have a duty of production standards. You work for FIFA. You can't just be using bad sound and bad lighting. So that's a balance we have to find. The lighting has to be good, the sound has to be good, but it can't be overly polished. So understanding where that line is probably just comes with experience.
Thank you so much for giving your precious time, Andrew. It was a pleasure to take you here, and do not forget to sign up to Public's website.